Voice was calm. That was the worst part. Rapid depressurization in 10 seconds. Mike Hennessy had been half asleep in the command chair, boots up on the console, dreaming about rain on a Tuesday afternoon in Stockport. The kind of rain that came sideways and tasted of nothing. He came awake the way old sailors do, not with a jolt, but with a sick liquid drop in his stomach that said something had gone properly wrong. That's the opening of Dead Reckoning, and in a few seconds you knew it was sci-fi, spaceship, danger, and the main character who feels like a real bloke, not a hero. And you also Stockport, rain on a Tuesday, boots on the console. You weren't told the genre, you felt it. That's what a good opening line does. It doesn't explain, it lands. Now I want you to think about the last time you bought a book from an author you'd never heard of. Not a recommendation from a friend, not something BookTok told you to read. A book you found yourself, browsing Amazon, scanning a shelf, scrolling through a list. How did you decide? You didn't read the book first, you couldn't. You made the decision based on a cover, a title, and a few sentences of description. Maybe you clicked look inside and read the first paragraph. That's it. That's the entire audition. And here's the thing most authors never sit with long enough. Your reader does the same thing with your book. They're not judging your writing. They haven't seen your writing yet. They're judging your packaging, your blurb, your opening line. You could have written the best book in your genre, but if those few seconds don't land, nobody finds it. Today, we're going to fix that. Hi, I'm Steve Kelly. This is Truth Bombs, so let's get into it. So what is the uncomfortable truth? Let me say something that's going to make some of you defensive. Your book is not competing on quality first, it's competing on clarity. A reader does not read your book to decide whether they want it. They decide whether they want it before they read a single page. And that's the decision that happens in about 10 seconds. Title, cover, blurb. Maybe the first line if they click look inside. That's the battleground. 10 seconds. And most authors are losing it. Not because they can't write, but because they're treating those 10 seconds like an afterthought. They spend months on the manuscript, they agonise over character arcs and plot structure and dialogue beats. Then they spend an afternoon on the blurb. They knock out an opening line and move on because the real story starts in chapter 3. That's backwards, because chapter 3 doesn't exist for a reader who bounced off the blurb. I'm not saying the book doesn't matter. Of course it matters. The book is everything for retention, for reviews, and for read-through, for career longevity. We covered that in episode 1. But the blurb and the opening line are what gets somebody to the book in the first place. They're the front door, and if the front door doesn't open, the house can't be a mansion. Nobody's going inside. So let's talk about how to build a front door that actually works. Opening lines first, then blurbs. So what an opening line is actually for? Let's reset something, because I think a lot of authors have the wrong idea about this. An opening line is not there to impress other writers. It's not there to win a literary prize. It's not there to show off your prose style. It's there to do two things. 1, orientate the reader, and 2, create tension. Nothing else. When somebody reads your first sentence, their brain is subconsciously asking 3 questions. Where am I? Who am I with? And why should I care? You don't need to answer all 3 in one line, but you need to start answering at least one of them. You need to give the reader something to stand on, a foothold. Let me show you what happens when you don't. The wind whispered through the broken memories of time. Read that again. What do you actually know? Where are you? Who's there? What's happening? Nothing. You know nothing. It sounds poetic. It might even sound nice, but it's empty. The reader has to do all the work. And a reader browsing Amazon deciding between your book and 20 others will not do that work. They click away. Now try this. Detective Rain found the body before the sun came up. One sentence and you know there's a detective, there's a body, it's early morning, and something has gone wrong. Character, action, implied tension, you're orientated, you have a foothold. You want to know more. That's the job. Not fireworks, not cleverness, direction. So, the specificity principle. There's a rule underneath this that applies to opening lines, blurbs, and honestly, most of your marketing. And it's this. Specificity creates immersion. Vagueness creates distance. Let me show you what I mean with two openings. It was the kind of morning that carried the weight of things. Sounds literary. Sounds like it means something. But what is actually happening? Where are we? Who's there? The reader is floating. They're not grounded in anything real. Now, the first victim was still warm when the rain started. Immediately, you've got concrete, specific. You know there's a victim, which means there's a crime. Still warm tells you it just happened. The rain is a sensory detail that puts you in the scene. Your brain is already building the picture. The difference between those two openings isn't talent. The first writer might be more talented than the second. The difference is that the second writer understood the job of an opening line, and the first one didn't. This is where authors get defensive. But my book is literary fiction. My readers expect a slow opening. My readers appreciate language. Maybe they do. But even the literary readers need a reason to keep going. Every literary fiction needs tension in the first paragraph. The tension doesn't have to be a dead body. It can be a question, an observation that unsettles, a detail that feels wrong, something off balance. The morning my sister disappeared, the kettle boiled twice, and nobody noticed. That's literary. It's specific. It's got voice, and it creates tension immediately. Something is wrong. You want to know more. You can have both, beautiful prose and functioning opening. They're not opposites, but you have to know the job comes first and the decoration comes second. So what are some of the common opening mistakes? Let me run through the ones I see constantly, and I mean constantly. In my experience, these are the big ones. They account for the vast majority of weak openings I come across. Starting with weather. The rain hammered against the window as dawn broke over the city. Unless your weather is directly relevant to what's happening next, the storm is what causes the accident, the fog is what allows the killer to move. Weather openings are dead space. They tell the reader nothing about the character, the conflict, or the stakes. They set dressing before you've built the set. And here's the thing you know this as a reader. Think about the last time you read a book that opened with weather. Did you feel excited, or did you skip ahead looking for when something actually happens? Your readers do the same thing. Starting with backstory. Sarah had always been the kind of person who avoided confrontation. Growing up in a small town in Dorset, she learned early that keeping quiet was easier than speaking up. That might be useful information later, but not on page one. Page one needs something happening now, not something that happened then. The temptation with backstory is that it feels necessary. The reader needs to understand Sarah before they can understand the plot. They don't. They need to be interested in Sarah before they care about her history. And interest comes from watching somebody in a moment of tension, not from reading their biography. Drop the reader into the moment. Let them wonder about the backstory. That wondering is what keeps them reading. Starting with the character waking up. I know, everybody does it. It feels natural. The story starts when the character's day starts. But a character waking up, stretching, making coffee, looking out the window, checking their phone, that's normality. and normality is the enemy of the first page. If nothing is wrong in the first paragraph, nothing is compelling. Your reader's subconscious is asking, why am I reading this exact moment? If the answer is because the character happens to be waking up, that's not good enough. So starting with abstract philosophy. Time is a curious thing. It moves differently depending on where you stand. This is the author warming up. This is throat clearing. It's the literary equivalent of walking up to a microphone and saying, right, where do I start? The reader doesn't need your worldview in sentence 1. They need a reason to get to sentence 2. Philosophy can come later, once you've earned their attention. Starting with action that has no context. This is the opposite mistake, and I see it a lot in thrillers. The explosion ripped through the building as Marcus dived behind the overturned truck. Bullets sparkling off the concrete beside him. Sounds exciting. But who the heck is Marcus? Why should I care if he lives or dies? I've known him for one sentence. Action without character investment is just noise. It's a Michael Bay film before the audience has bought a ticket. You need the reader to care about someone before you put them in danger. Even a single line of character, something that makes Marcus feel human before the explosion. That would change everything. The fix for all these is the same. Put a character in a specific moment where something is off balance. Not necessarily dramatic, just off balance. Something that creates a question in the reader's mind. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, which was wrong. Letters from the ministry always came on Fridays. That's the tension. It's quiet, it's specific, and it makes you want to know why. So, the 10-second test. Here's something practical you can do right now. Open your book, read the first paragraph, then honestly ask yourself, if I had never heard of this author and I was browsing Amazon with 30 other books in front of me, would this paragraph make me keep reading? Not, is this good writing? That's a different question. Would this make a stranger keep reading? If the honest answer is no, or even maybe, rewrite it. I know that's painful. Your opening might be something you've polished for months. It might be the line that came to you at 2 a.m. and felt like magic. It might be the sentence your beta readers said they loved. But beta readers are already committed to reading your book. They're not the test. The test is someone who hasn't committed yet. Someone who's one click away from closing the tab. Write for that person. Now let's talk about blurbs. If opening lines are misunderstood, blurbs are a disaster zone. And the reason is simple. Most authors think a blurb is a summary of the book. It's not. A blurb is a sales argument. A summary explains what happens. A blurb creates desire. Those are completely different skills, and writing a great novel doesn't automatically mean you can write a great blurb. In the same way that being a great chef doesn't mean you can write a great menu. Here's what I mean. A summary sounds like this. John must face his past whilst navigating love and danger in a world turned upside down. What does that tell you? Nothing specific. I don't know the genre. I don't know the setting. I don't know the stakes. Face his past could mean anything. Love and danger? It's so generic. It could describe 50,000 books. A blurb sounds like this. When a body is discovered in a sealed government archive, DCI John Tennant uncovers records from a year that officially never existed. To solve the murder, he must expose a truth powerful people have spent decades burying. And they'll kill to keep it hidden. Now I know it's a crime thriller, a detective protagonist, a specific crime, body in an archive, a mystery, a year that never existed. Well, there's your stakes. And it's powerful. People who will kill, there's your conflict. He has to expose something dangerous. One makes me shrug, the other makes me want to click buy. The difference isn't length, it's specificity and structure. The reader isn't judging your writing, they're managing risk. Before I give you a formula, I want to explain why this matters so much. Because once you understand the psychology, the formula stops feeling like a template and starts feeling like common sense. A reader browsing Amazon is not looking for the best book. They're looking for the safest bet. Think about what's actually happening. They have a finite amount of time, and money probably. They're choosing between your book and a dozen of others. They can't read all of them to decide, so they're scanning for signals that reduce the risk. Does this look like the genre I want? Does this feel professional? Does this sound like the kind of story I enjoy? Can I trust this author to deliver? If your blurb is vague, you're increasing the reader's sense of risk. They don't know what they're getting, so they move on to a blurb that tells them clearly. If your blurb is specific, you're reducing risk. The reader thinks, yes, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And they click to buy. That's why comparison titles work in blurbs for fans of Val McDermid and Anne Cleves. It's a risk reducer. It tells the reader, if you'd like these, you'll probably like this. It's not a guarantee, but it's a signal. This is why trope language works. Enemies to lovers. Tell a romance reader exactly what dynamic to expect. It's a signal that says, I know what you want and I'm going to deliver it. This is why specific settings work. Set in 1940s Bletchley Park is doing more work than you think. It's not just a location, it's a promise about the kind of atmosphere, the kind of detail, the kind of story you're going to get. Every specific detail in your blurb is reducing risk. Every vague phrase is increasing it. Once you understand that, you stop writing blurbs to sound impressive and start writing them to build confidence. It's a different goal, different results. So here's the formula for building that confidence. The blurb formula. Shh, be quiet. I'm going to give you a structure that works across most commercial fiction. It's not the only way to write a blurb, but if yours isn't working, this should fix it. So line 1, introduce the character and their world in one sentence. Not their entire backstory. One sentence that tells who they are and why their normal looks like this. It grounds the reader. DCI Tess Hart hasn't lost a case in 3 years. When Ellie Morgan inherits a crumbling cottage on the Cornish coast, she's hoping for a fresh start. Or Jack Dalton left the army with 2 things, a dishonourable discharge and a name on a list. Each of those tells you something about the character and implies a genre without naming it. Next, introduce the problem. This is the thing that disrupts their world, the inciting incidents, the thing that goes wrong. Like this. Then a teenage girl goes missing from a village that hasn't seen a crime in 40 years. But the cottage comes with a sitting tenant who refuses to leave and a history the locals won't talk about. When the first name on the list turns up dead, Jake realises somebody else has the same list. The problem should be specific and concrete, not she must face a new challenge. That means nothing. Why, what challenge? What specifically is wrong? Okay, next. Raise the stakes. What happens if the character fails? What's at risk? This is where you create urgency. As Tess digs deeper, she discovers the girl isn't the first to disappear, and the pattern leads to something inside her own department. The closer Ellie gets to the truth, the more she realises the cottage wasn't a gift, it was a trap. Jake has 72 hours before the next name is crossed off, and his is at the bottom. Notice what each of those does. It takes the initial problem and makes it personal. The missing girl case becomes about corruption in Tess's own department. Ellie's fresh start becomes a threat. Jake's investigation becomes a countdown on his own life. The escalation needs to feel like the ground shifted underneath the character. The problem isn't just bigger, it's closer, more dangerous, more personal. Finally, end with a hook. Not a spoiler, a question, an escalation, something that makes the reader need to know how it ends. This is where blurbs die. They either give away the whole plot, in which case, why would I buy the book? Or they fizzle into a generic line like, can she find the truth before it's too late? The last line of your blurb should feel like a door swinging open. The reader can see something through it, but can't quite make it out. The only way to find out is to buy the book. So here's a test. Read the last line on your blurb and ask, does this create a specific question in the reader's mind? Not a vague, I wonder what happens, but a specific, how is she going to survive that? Or who is really behind this? If the question is specific, the hook is working. If it's vague, rewrite it. Proof this really works. Here's a real blurb breakdown. Let me show you this formula in the wild. Because it's not something I invented, it's what's successful. Books already do this. Take The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, the fastest selling crime debut in UK history. You've almost certainly heard of it. Let's look at how the blurb is built. It opens with the setup. 4 retirees in a peaceful retirement village who met every week to discuss unsolved crimes. That's your character and world in one beat. You know who they are, you know where the setting, and you already know the tone. This is going to be a warm, a bit quirky, and involve murder. The genre is crystal clear without the word cosy. Then the problem. A local property developer turns up dead with a mysterious photograph left next to the body. That's specific, that's concrete. It's not trouble comes to the village, it's a body, a photograph, and a specific victim. You can picture it immediately. Then the stakes shift. Their hobby just became real. They're in the middle of their first live case, and more bodies start turning up. The fun premise suddenly has teeth, and the hook at the end. Can this unlikely group catch the killer before it's too late? Now notice what the blurb doesn't do. It doesn't explain the subplots. It doesn't name all 4 characters. And it doesn't give you their backstories. It doesn't reveal the twist. It doesn't try to capture everything. It captures the setup, the problem, the escalation, and leaves you wanting to know how it ends. That's the formula. Character, problem, stakes, hook. One of the biggest selling crime novels of the last decade used exactly that structure I just gave you. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to use it properly. So why do most blurbs fail? Let me list the specific failures because you'll recognise at least one of these. Probably more. Too vague, a story of love, loss and redemption. That could be any book ever written. Vagueness feels safe because it doesn't exclude anyone, but it doesn't attract anyone either. Specificity attracts the right reader. Vagueness attracts no one. Too many characters. I see blurbs that introduce 4 or 5 named characters. A reader scanning a blurb can't hold more than 2, maybe 3 names. If the blurb reads like a cast list, it's too crowded. Focus on the protagonist, maybe one other key character. That's it. No stakes. She must uncover the truth before it's too late. Before what's too late? What's happened if she doesn't? If the stakes aren't specific, they don't exist. Before it's too late is not a stake. Before the killer strikes again is. But before her sister is taken off life support is. Before the evidence is destroyed at midnight is. Make the consequence real. Now, over-explaining the plot, the blurb is not a synopsis. You don't need to cover the whole story. You need to cover enough to create desire. Usually that means the setup and the first major complication. Maybe the midpoint escalation. Never the ending, never the twist. Leave the reader wanting. There are no genre signals. We talked about this in episode 2 with GEO versus SEO, but it applies directly here. If your blurb doesn't clearly signal what genre you're in, readers can't tell if it's for them. And a reader who can't tell won't take the risk. Use trope language. Use genre conventions. If it's enemies to lovers, say so. If it's a locked room mystery, say so. If it's a grim dark fantasy, your blurb should feel grim dark. The look inside connection. Here's where opening lines and blurbs connect, and where most authors miss an opportunity. A reader sees your cover, it looks right for the genre. They read your blurb, it sounds interesting. Now they click on Look Inside on Amazon and read the first page. This is the final hurdle, the last gate before the buy button, and it's the one most authors don't think about as a connected piece. The blurb made a promise. The opening needs to confirm it. If your blurb promises a tense crime thriller and the book opens with 3 pages of backstory about the detective's childhood, you've broken the deal. The reader expected tension. You gave them biography. They closed the preview. If your blurb promises a cosy romance in a seaside town and the book opens with a protagonist stuck in a traffic jam in London thinking about her ex, You might get to the seaside by chapter 2, but the reader doesn't. You know that. They want the coast. You gave them the M25. And if your blurb promises fast-paced action and your first page is a slow, reflective character study, it's a mismatch. If your blurb promised a dark, atmospheric gothic and your opening is breezy and light, it's a mismatch. If your opening line needs to match the energy of your blurb, not repeat it, match it. If the blurb is tense, the opening should be tense. If the blurb is warm and inviting, the opening should be warm and inviting. Think of the blurb as a trailer and the opening line as the first scene of the film. The audience walks into the cinema because of the trailer. If the first scene feels like a different film, they lose trust, and trust is everything when somebody is deciding whether to spend money and time on you. This is something you can literally test. Read your blurb out loud, then immediately read your first page out loud. Do they feel like they belong together? Is the tone consistent? Is the energy level consistent? If somebody reads the blurb and then the opening, would they nod and settle in, or would they frown and wonder if they downloaded the wrong book? If there's a disconnect, you have two options. Rewrite the opening to match the blurb, or rewrite the blurb to match the opening. Either works, but they have to match. And honestly, most of the time, the blurb is closer to right because you wrote it to sell. The opening is where the mismatch lives, because you wrote it to begin a story. Those are different impulses. Align them is your fix. So rewriting your blurb, a practical walkthrough. So let me walk you through how to actually do this. Not theory, the actual steps. So step 1, open a blank document. Don't look at your current blurb. Not yet anyway. Step 2, write one sentence that answers who is the main character and what is their world like before things go wrong. Keep it under 25 words. Step 3, write one sentence that answers what goes wrong. What's the inciting incident? Again, specific and concrete. Step 4, write 1 or 2 sentences that answers what gets worse. What are the stakes? What's the escalation? Step 5, write one sentence that ends on a hook, a question the reader could only answer by buying the book. Now step 6, read it back. Is the genre obvious? Would a stranger know exactly what type of book this is? If not, add genre signals, trope language, setting details, comparable flavour. Step 7, now and only now, look at your current blurb. Compare them. I bet the money version you just wrote is clearer, more specific and more compelling than what's currently on your Amazon page. The reason is simple. When you wrote your original blurb, you knew too much about your book. You tried to capture everything. The themes, the subplots, the emotional arc, the twist. And in trying to capture everything, you captured nothing. This is called the curse of knowledge. You can't unknow your own story. So when you write a journey of discovery and redemption, it means something to you. You can see the whole arc, the specific scenes, the character transformation. But to a reader who hasn't read the book, those words are empty. They don't have your context. They can only see what you put on the page. So starting fresh with a strict structure forces you out of your own head and into the reader's. That's why it works. If you want to refine it further, go read the blurbs on the top 20 books in your subcategory. Not to copy them, to feel the rhythm, to notice what they include and what they leave out, to understand how your genre handles blurb structure. Then revise yours to match that level of clarity while keeping your voice. One more thing. Once you've got a blurb you think works, send it to someone who hasn't read your book. Not a writing friend. They'll read it like a writer. Send it to a reader, someone who buys your books in your genre. Ask them 2 questions. What genre is this? And would you want to read it? If they get the genre right and say yes, you've done. If they hesitate on either question, you've got more work to do. Here's the bottom line. You can write a brilliant book, but if your blurb doesn't convert and your opening line doesn't anchor, fewer people will ever reach that brilliance. This connects directly to everything we've talked about in this series. Episode 1, your lifetime reader value depends on getting people into book 1. If the blurb doesn't convert, the funnel is empty from the start. No read-through, no lifetime value, no compound growth. In episode 2, AI recommends books based on clear, specific descriptions. If your blurb is vague, You're invisible to both readers and algorithms. Your blurb is the first domino. If it doesn't fall, nothing else moves. And your opening line is the confirmation. It's the moment where a browser becomes a reader, where a click becomes a commitment. Get those two right, and everything else you've built, the series, the back matter, the email list, the positioning, has a chance to work. Get them wrong, and it doesn't matter how good the rest of it is. This isn't selling out, it's respecting the reader's decision-making process. They're not stupid for scanning blurbs quickly. They're busy, they're overwhelmed with options. Your job is to make their decision easy. Get specific, get clear, match the energy of your blurb to the energy of your opening page. And then let the writing do what it always was going to do. Keep them reading. Because when you understand the game, you stop panicking. And when you stop panicking, you stop quitting. So rule number 1 is write the damn book and stay in the game. Everything else is optimization. So next week we'll have another truth bomb. Same honest, no fluff, just the stuff nobody else is telling you. If you found this useful, subscribe, share it with a writer who needs to hear it. And if you've got a question that you want me to tackle, something you're stuck on, something nobody's explaining, get in touch. I'll see you then.